They thought kicking him out of his own bank would be the end of him, but they didn't know he'd written the rule book that would bring him right back to the top before lunch. Portland rain doesn't pour, it lingers. It gets into your collar, settles behind your ears, and follows you. That Tuesday morning, it clung to Andre Kinsey's tailored charcoal suit like a silent witness. He didn't run. He never did. He walked from the underground garage to the glass entrance of Kinsey Trust Financial's main branch on S.W. Morrison Street, just like he'd done nearly every morning for the last 11 years. But this time, something was off. The lobby was quieter than usual, as if someone had cut the volume on the room. Phones still rang, but softer. Conversations dropped mid-sentence. All eyes turned to him. Andre caught the shift, but he kept walking. Head up, briefcase in hand. Then they moved. 2 uniformed security guards stepped out from near the elevators, the ones who usually gave him a nod and a casual, "Morning, Mr. Kinsey." Today, no smiles. Just eyes locked on him, mouths tight. "Mr. Kinsey," one of them said, voice low, apologetic already. "We've been instructed not to let you pass beyond the front desk." Andre blinked, confused. "What are you talking about?" "We've been told you've been removed from executive access. Effective as of this morning." A pause. Andre turned slightly, as if checking for cameras, or maybe waiting for someone to shout, "Just kidding." His name was still etched into the frosted glass behind reception. Not temporary signage. Permanent. Like carved in stone kind of permanent. From the corner of his eye, he spotted Lena Martell, his executive assistant of 9 years, standing halfway down the hallway. Her hand covered her mouth, eyes glossy. She didn't say a word. "I founded this place," Andre said, quietly but firm. "That badge on your chest exists because of me." "I know, sir," the younger guard murmured. "But we were given orders. The board filed something with corporate this morning." Andre exhaled through his nose. No yelling. That wasn't his way. But his jaw flexed, and that was enough for people to start backing up. Not in fear. Out of shame. The kind you feel when you know something wrong is happening, but you're not the one stopping it. A woman holding a checkbook froze at the counter. A teller looked like she might cry. A kid near the 8 took out his phone. Security didn't manhandle him. They just stood there, quietly waiting, hoping he'd make it easy for them. Andre did something they didn't expect. He nodded slowly, turned around, and walked out without saying another word. No drama, just silent. The automatic doors opened for him, almost like they didn't know he wasn't supposed to be there anymore. Outside, the rain hadn't let up. Andre didn't rush to his car. He just started walking down the block. South, toward the old Kinsey headquarters on SW 2nd Avenue, a building he hadn't stepped foot in since the company expanded 3 years ago. He passed by 2 baristas standing under a red awning. One of them whispered to the other, "Ain't that the guy who—" Andre kept walking. The water pooled at his cuffs. His briefcase handle, normally smooth and comforting, felt like ice. Not once did he look back. But inside, something had snapped. Clean. Sharp. Like a switch flipping. And that's when Andre Kinsey stopped being the man they kicked out and started becoming the man who'd take it all back. The night before, the 33rd floor of the Sentinel building downtown had hosted something that barely resembled a proper board meeting. It was late, past 9 p.m., and the air was thick with espresso, half-eaten Thai takeout, and quiet tension. The blinds were drawn, and the legal team was conspicuously absent. A few newer board members sat stiff in their chairs, scrolling nervously through legal documents on tablets they barely understood. The ones who orchestrated the meeting didn't seem worried. At the head of the table sat Ronald Blaine, interim CFO. Suits liked to call him Sharp. Staff called him the Scalpel, not because he cut clean, but because he never cared who bled. Ronald leaned back in his chair and said, "We don't need a court to tell us when leadership has run its course. Andre's a visionary, sure, but vision doesn't pay dividends." A few board members shifted in their seats. "Look," he added, "this isn't personal. This is business. Our market cap's plateaued. We've lost 2 major contracts, and while Andre's out mentoring interns and preaching ownership, Other banks are eating our lunch." "But the man owns 28% of the company," said Janelle Stokes, a senior advisor who had been with Kinsey Trust since the early days. "You know what kind of message this sends if we just sideline him without warning?" Ronald didn't flinch. "He left a back door in the charter years ago. Emergency governance override in case of founder impairment or negligence. All we had to do was build a case." A younger man at the end of the table, Derek Harlow, barely 32, recently promoted to VP of Strategic Ops, looked up. "We're saying Andre's negligent?" Ronald smiled. "We're saying he's distracted. He's too involved with external ventures, not focused on scaling. And perception is reality." Nobody said it out loud, but it hovered there. Andre was too powerful, too principled, too independent. Investors wanted a puppet, not a presence. And Andre didn't play puppet. The vote was quick. 9 in favor, 3 against, 1 abstained. Janelle stood up. "If this backfires, it's all on you." Ronald replied, "If this works, we save the company from itself." Janelle didn't respond. She just grabbed her coat and walked out into the parking garage, muttering something about cowards and convenience. That night, an email went out to all internal departments. Effective 8 a.m., Andre Kinsey will no longer retain executive privileges pending review of fiduciary oversight and shareholder interests. All operational decisions will be handled by acting CFO Ronald Blaine until further notice. The signature on the bottom of the email? Not Andre's. Back at his apartment, Andre had just returned from speaking at a youth entrepreneurship event at a local community college. He was laughing on the phone with his niece in Oakland, telling her the story of how he once tried to pitch lemonade to his third-grade principal during recess. "Uncle Dre, you were selling lemonade in class," she giggled. "Girl, I was charging interest on the cups." He didn't check his work email until well after midnight. The subject line caught his eye first. Operational shift. Notification. Kinsey Trust Financial. He clicked. Read. Reread. Then he just sat there. Not angry, not scared, just still. He walked to the balcony, looked out at the city, and took a long, deep breath. Andre had known this moment might come. Not this way, not this soon, but power always draws envy. And black power? That draws sabotage, especially when it's clean, especially when it doesn't beg. He poured himself a drink, neat, 2 fingers, and stared at the lights in the distance. "They really think they buried me," he whispered to himself. But they forgot he wrote the map, and he remembered exactly where the exit signs were. The sidewalk was slick, uneven in places. Andre's shoes weren't made for weather like this, but he didn't care. The rain was still falling steadily, soaking into his shoulders, his cuffs, his briefcase. Each step away from the branch felt heavier, not from the water, but from what had just happened. It was one thing to be betrayed. It was another to be publicly erased. He passed a food truck near Pioneer Courthouse Square, the scent of fried onions and sausage lingering in the mist. Normally he might have stopped, chatted with the guy inside. Sammy always wore that ridiculous Seahawks beanie. But today, Andre kept walking. His mouth was dry. His mind was louder than the traffic. Who signed off on it? Who let this happen? He replayed the board roster in his head. One by one, Janelle wouldn't have agreed. Blake? Probably too spineless to resist. And Ronald? Yeah. Ronald Blaine had always been watching the throne. Andre had noticed it months ago. The delayed replies, the meetings without minutes, the "don't worry about it" gestures when Andre pressed for clarity on revenue breakdowns. And now here it was. The play. Bold, surgical, but messy around the edges. Andre turned the corner onto SW 2nd Avenue. The Kinsey headquarters building was smaller, older. A red brick mid-rise tucked between a parking garage and an old bookstore. But this place? It had soul. It was where it all started. Back in 2012, Andre had rented the 3rd floor for $600 a month. Back then, Kinsey Trust was just him, Lena, and 2 interns sharing a printer that jammed every morning. They worked 14-hour days, ate tuna salad from the deli downstairs, launched their first product with a logo designed on PowerPoint. Now, here he was, returning not as a boss, but as a man who'd been pushed off his own mountain. Andre reached the doors. The buzzer still worked. The same raspy click as always. The receptionist, Maribel, mid-60s, white hair tied back in a tight bun, looked up from behind the desk and lit up. "Mr. Kinsey?" "Hey, Mari. You good?" "I'm fine, honey." "You?" Andre offered a tired smile. "Ask me in an hour." She chuckled softly and slid him a keycard without asking anything more. He took the elevator to the 5th floor, a place they never remodeled. Wood paneling, humming lights, old Kinsey posters on the wall. The original mission statement printed in bold letters outside the legal team's glass office. "Build trust. Protect dignity. Keep the gate open for others." Andre read it. Twice. Inside, Carmen Wynne, his general counsel for 8 years, was already standing when he walked in. Tall, brown-skinned, always wearing heels that added to her courtroom presence, even when there wasn't a courtroom. She looked at him for half a second. Then she pointed to a laptop already set up on the conference table. "I saw the security footage," she said. "It was sent to me by someone in risk management. You good?" "I will be. I figured. We need to move fast." Andre sat down. "Charter clause. Still valid. Article 4, subsection 9. You wrote it in 2014 after that VC tried to pull a backdoor restructure." Andre almost smiled. "Didn't think I'd need it this soon." Carmen looked at him, serious. "We call an emergency meeting of legacy board members. 3 signatures gets the override started. You'll need to issue a reinstatement motion before the hour's up. Done. Also," she added, "you'll want to call Janelle." "I will." Andre pulled out his phone, hands still damp. He tapped Janelle's number. She answered in 3 rings. "I knew you'd call," she said. "Were you in the room?" "I was. I voted no. They didn't care. You staying in?" She hesitated. "For now, but I've got my resignation letter in my drafts. I'll hit send when you're ready to walk back in." Andre leaned back. The city lights flickered against the rain on the window. His fingers tapped against the table, mind no longer replaying the betrayal, just calculating the reversal. They played chess, but he built the board. And now it was his turn to move. Carmen paced as the video call interface loaded. Her heels tapped softly against the linoleum, the only real sound in the old legal suite. Andre watched the spinning circle on the screen, then glanced down at the document she'd printed and placed before him. Article 4, subsection 9. Emergency Reinstatement Protocol. Written in his own words. He barely remembered doing it, back when everything was smaller, leaner, more fragile. It had been a safeguard, meant for a different kind of crisis. Maybe a major hack, or a hostile investor with bad math and big promises. But it was still there, legally binding, notarized, signed by the founding board. "Connecting now," Carmen said. 3 faces appeared on the screen, each in separate windows. Leon Wallace, former head of product, semi-retired, and now raising alpacas outside Sacramento. Trish Ogden, the company's first investor, now sitting on 3 non-profit boards in Seattle. And Colby Vance, quiet but sharp, one of the original compliance officers, currently operating out of his garage in Boise, still wearing the Kinsey Trust hoodie he got in 2015. "Dre," Trish said first. "Heard you got thrown out like a temp worker." Andre smirked. "Not my best morning." Leon chuckled. "They've lost their damn minds." "Let's skip to it," Carmen said, sliding a laptop toward Andre. "We need majority signature approval to trigger the clause. Everyone on this call qualifies as original board with executive privileges from 2012 to 2016. Colby cleared his throat. "What exactly are we invoking?" Andre leaned in. "Emergency reversal of executive removal. Based on the original charter, if 3 legacy members agree that the removal wasn't properly vetted or voted on in good faith, the acting board's decision can be overridden pending judicial review." Colby nodded. "And you think this was bad faith?" "I know it was," Andre said. "Ronald used a provision meant to protect the company during crises, not coups." Trish was already scanning the document on her screen. "Yeah, this isn't going to sit well in court." Leon raised his coffee mug. "I'm in," Trish nodded. "Me too." Colby hesitated, rubbing his temple. You sure you want back in, Dre? This ain't just about getting your job back. It's about cleaning house. And that won't be easy. Andre met his gaze. I don't need easy. I just need right. Colby smiled faintly. All right then. Count me in. Carmen immediately began typing up the official filing. I'll send a PDF for e-signatures in 2 minutes, she said. Once the third one comes in, Andre can issue a notice of reinstatement. We'll copy legal and compliance. By Oregon state law, they're required to honor it until a formal injunction is filed. Andre stood up and walked to the window, staring down at the street. His own building. His own people. Somewhere in that glass shell. Someone was probably sitting in his chair, making calls with his title. Not for long. As the paperwork circulated, Carmen stayed quiet. She didn't ask him how he felt. She didn't need to. She'd been with him through worse. The early days. The near collapse in 2015. The time a vendor tried to sue them into oblivion over a breached contract Andre didn't even sign. She knew the look in his eye now. Focused, not angry. Calculated. Ding. Leon signed, Carmen said. Ding. Trish, too. They waited. Colby's box flickered on the screen, his eyes scanning line by line. Then, ding. All three. Carmen clicked a few keys. Done. Sending to compliance and operations now. Andre sat back down. The next part was less glamorous. Reading from the policy book, clicking through form fields, adding his signature to the reinstatement document. By the time it was done, his inbox had already pinged with 3 automatic updates. Access level restored. Calendar resynced. Executive privileges reinstated. Welcome back, Carmen said. Andre didn't smile. There's one more thing, he said, standing up. We're not just fixing the paperwork. We're cleaning house. But before any of that, he needed to return to where the disrespect happened. And bring the storm with him. Carmen pulled up the live feed notification from Kinsey's internal camera system. With executive privileges reinstated, Andre had access to everything again. Emails, logs, door security timestamps. The timestamps told a story. Ronald had arrived just after 7 a.m. He hadn't left. Looks like he moved into your office, Carmen muttered, scrolling through an access report. Andre didn't react. He was already tying his tie in the reflection of the old break room microwave. Navy blue with a silver pinstripe. He always wore that one when things got serious. Not for flash. For clarity. Compliance should confirm the filing within 15 minutes, Carmen said, looking over her glasses. After that, you walk back in, legally. Andre finished tying the knot and grabbed his coat. I'm not walking back in alone. He picked up his phone, scrolled down his contacts and tapped. Hey, Lena, he said when she answered. You still at the branch? Her voice was shaky. They moved me to the basement level. No real explanation. Andre's tone didn't waver. Print out the clause we drafted in 2014, the emergency reinstatement section. Take it to the compliance desk. Don't say anything else. Just hand it to them. I thought you... I'm back, he said. Tell them that. There was a pause, a sharp inhale. Then Lena said, I'm on it. Andre hung up and looked at Carmen. You ready? She raised an eyebrow. Always. They took the elevator down and stepped out into the rain again. Carmen handed Andre a sealed envelope. In case Ronald tries to block entry, what is it? Copy of the court injunction we filed last month during the investor dispute, the one that reconfirmed your binding control during crisis votes. It's dry ink. He can't argue it. As they approached the building, Andre saw 3 staffers talking just outside the main doors. One of them spotted him and nudged the others. All 3 turned. Nobody spoke. They just stepped aside. Andre walked in without slowing down, Carmen behind him. The receptionist, new kid, maybe 3 months in, froze at the sight of him. Mr. Kinsey. I thought... I know what you thought, he said. Is compliance upstairs? Yes, sir. He turned toward the elevators. The doors opened at floor 17, where the heart of Kinsey Trust Financial pulsed. Andre didn't pause. He walked the hall like he never left it. People glanced up from cubicles. One woman gasped. Another dropped her pen. No one moved to stop him. He approached the glass door of the executive suite. Inside, Ronald sat at Andre's desk, legs crossed, sipping espresso. Two other board members, Helen Dorsey and Brent Carrow, sat across from him, visibly tense. Ronald's eyes flicked up. "Andre, that's Mr. Kinsey to you," Ronald smirked. "You're not authorized to be here." Carmen stepped forward and placed the envelope on the desk. "That's incorrect." Ronald didn't touch it. "You're trying to reverse a majority board decision with a dead clause." "It's not dead," Carmen replied. "It's active." The air in the executive suite felt different now. Andre didn't have to say anything else. His presence alone shifted the balance in the room. Ronald stood by the window, pretending to read his phone, but his hand trembled just enough for Carmen to notice. Brent and Helen exchanged a glance, then quietly excused themselves with muttered words about needing to check a few things downstairs. Andre stayed seated. Lena appeared in the doorway moments later, clutching a manila folder to her chest. She looked like she'd just come from a wind tunnel, hair frizzy from the humidity, eyes raw, but she was standing tall. "I gave the clause to compliance," she said. "They already forwarded it to risk management and finance ops." Andre gestured for her to sit. "Thank you." She sat slowly, then leaned toward him. "People are confused. No one knows what's happening. The staff's trying to figure out who they're supposed to report to. They'll know by end of day." Andre replied. "They'll hear it from me." He turned to Carmen. "Can we make the announcement?" Carmen nodded. "Already queued. Once you confirm, it goes out via email and internal messaging." "Do it." She tapped her phone. "Done. 10 floors down, across 312 desks and 7 departments, employees paused mid-click, mid-sentence, mid-call as the alert hit their screens. To all Kinsey Trust financial staff, effective immediately, Andre Kinsey has resumed his role as Chief Executive Officer. All executive functions revert to the original chain of command. Further instructions to follow. No room for interpretation, no legalese, just clarity. Back upstairs, Ronald finally broke his silence. "You think this is sustainable?" he said, voice brittle. "They'll turn on you again." Andre looked at him. "Maybe, but it won't be today." He stood up and walked toward the office door. Before he left, he turned to Ronald one last time. "You know what your biggest mistake was?" Andre asked. "You thought this was about control. It's not. It's about credibility. And you never had any." Ronald scoffed. "You seriously think this company lives and dies on your name?" Andre stared at him a moment longer. "No. But I know it lived because of what I stood for. And that's something you never understood." Without waiting for a response, he stepped out into the hallway. As he moved down the corridor, more staff began to rise from their desks. Some smiled. Some just stared, unsure what to say. A few whispered to each other in disbelief. But Andre just kept walking. He passed Mira Simmons, head of internal comms, who nodded and said, "Sir, when you're ready, the media's been calling all morning. They're picking up on something." Andre stopped for a second. "Not yet. Let them wonder." "Yes, sir." When he entered the break room, it went silent. Not the awkward kind, but the respectful kind. The kind that falls over a room when people realize they've been watching something historic, something most of them will never see again in their careers. Andre looked around. Employees of every kind, tech analysts, product designers, entry-level hires fresh out of college. All of them had been watching this story play out from the sidelines. And now, here he was. Not with police, not with lawyers, just with proof. He raised his voice slightly. "If you're wondering what just happened, I'm back. Legally, officially, and for real." A few people exhaled audibly. Someone laughed. A handful clapped. "But this isn't about me coming back," he added. "This is about who stayed steady when it got messy." He scanned the room, locking eyes with several people who had clearly been put through the ringer in the last 24 hours. "Some of you all stood back and watched, I get it. Fear does that. But some of you," he looked directly at Lena, "some of you stood still even when the ground shook, and I'll remember that." But there were still faces missing, and words that hadn't been said yet, especially to the ones who had been smiling while plotting. And that was coming next. Andre didn't go straight back to his office. Not yet. He needed one more conversation before the dust could even start to settle. Carmen walked beside him, silent but alert. "Legal wants to prep a statement for the press," she said. "Should go out today." "We'll hold," Andre replied. "Let's deal with the inside rot before we talk to the outside world." He took the stairs up to the executive conference wing, not the elevator. He wanted time to think, to feel the ground beneath his feet, to remind himself that he was still here and still choosing every step. At the end of the long hallway was the boardroom. Mahogany doors, 10-foot ceilings, the works. Andre pushed the door open without knocking. Inside, 4 people were already seated. Janelle Stokes, Helen Dorsey, Brent Caro, and Ronald Blaine. They all looked up. No one said a word. Andre walked to the head of the table, the same seat he'd occupied for over a decade. He didn't sit down. He placed both hands on the chair back and looked each of them in the eye, one by one. "We're going to talk," he said. "Not because I owe anyone here a conversation, but because I believe in leaving the lights on before closing a door." Janelle leaned forward. "I voted against the motion. I told you I would." "I know," Andre said. "You kept your spine." Helen fidgeted with her bracelet. "Look, this wasn't meant to be." "Save it," Andre cut her off. "You sat in that room and watched it happen. You didn't speak up." Brent cleared his throat. "It was a strategic misstep." "No, Brent. It was cowardice in a tailored suit." Ronald finally spoke. "You think coming back with signatures and emergency clauses makes you invincible? All it does is delay the inevitable." Andre turned to him. "Let's be clear. This company didn't succeed because I played it safe. It succeeded because I took risks and backed people who never even got in the room before I opened that door." He stepped closer. "You think you were the future? You're just noise. White noise. Loud enough to distract people until something better comes along." Ronald's jaw twitched. "This company's name, my name, means something. In communities that have been locked out, in cities no one builds in households where parents explain to their kids that, yes, someone who looks like them can run a bank, can own one." Andre circled the table slowly, stopping behind each chair. "You tried to erase me. But here's the part you didn't understand. I'm not just the founder. I'm the foundation." He let the silence hang. No one interrupted. Then he pulled out a small folder and placed it in the center of the table. "What's this?" Helen asked. "Your resignations. Pre-filled. Names, dates, effective immediately." She blinked. "You can sign them now, or I can drag this into the media cycle. I promise you, it won't be pretty." Janelle said nothing. She looked over at Helen and Brent, who exchanged nervous glances. Ronald didn't move. Andre turned to him. "You want to stay? Fine. But know this, you'll never sit at this table again. I'll reassign you to a branch in Eugene with no windows and no staff. You'll be training tellers until retirement." "You don't have the authority." "I do now," Andre said calmly. "And I'll use it." Helen grabbed a pen first. Signed. Brent followed. Janelle, without a word, stood and left the room. Only Ronald remained seated. Andre gave him one last look. "You wanted control? Now you get to watch what real leadership looks like." But taking the office back was only half the battle. Rebuilding trust, that was the long game. And Andre knew the next move had to come from something deeper than paperwork. Andre didn't call an all-hands meeting. He didn't rent out a conference center or stream a town hall. That wasn't his style. Instead, he walked the floors. Every one of them. From the 21st down to the mailroom on 1, he shook hands, made eye contact, and asked questions. Not about quarterly goals or KPIs. He asked about people's lives. What they were working on. What worried them. What motivated them to show up every day. He knew names, not just titles. "Tyson," he said, stopping in front of a data analyst wearing a faded Wu-Tang hoodie. "How's your little brother doing? He passed his driver's test." Tyson blinked, surprised, then laughed. "Yeah, first try. I meant to email you." "You didn't have to, but tell him I said congrats." Andre moved on, just as natural. No clipboard, no assistant trailing behind him. This was how he rebuilt. On the 14th floor, he stopped outside the break room. Word had spread that he was making rounds, and employees had begun to follow him, quietly, respectfully. When he turned around, a small crowd had gathered. Dozens of faces, some familiar, some fresh. He cleared his throat. "I know what happened yesterday shook a lot of you," he said. "It shook me too. Not because I didn't expect resistance. Power attracts pressure. But because I forgot how fast loyalty gets tested in silence." A few people nodded. One woman, in HR, folded her arms and leaned against the doorframe. Not out of disrespect, but because she'd seen things fall apart before, and she was watching to see if this would be any different. Andre didn't speak like a man trying to defend himself. He wasn't campaigning. He was explaining. "I built this company so people like us didn't have to keep asking for permission, so we could walk into rooms without apologizing, so we could bank on each other, not just the system." He paused, letting that settle. "But I let things get too big without planting deeper roots. I hired people who talked the talk but didn't know the soil. That's on me." Mira from internal comms raised her hand. "Are they gone?" Andre met her gaze. "The ones who needed to be. Yes. And more might follow. I'm not sweeping this under the rug. We'll audit every department that enabled that vote and didn't question it." A few whispers rippled through the crowd. "But I'm not here to burn it all down. That's not leadership. That's revenge. I'm here to build smarter this time. Tighter, more accountable. And that means the mission gets sharper." An older man from facilities, Reggie, Andre remembered, stepped forward. "You mean we're going back to basics?" "No," Andre said. "We're going forward with backbone. If you came here because you believed in what Kinsey Trust stood for, now's the time to prove it. Not to me, to each other. The people next to you. The ones you ignored when the floor started shaking." The silence was thick, but not empty. It held weight. Andre let out a breath. "I'll be hosting roundtables, not with just managers, with anybody who's got something to say. Carmen's team will rotate through every department to listen, not to monitor. You don't need a title to have a voice here." That's how we started. That's how we're continuing. He turned to leave, then looked back once more. "This company isn't a ladder. It's a table. Either you bring something to it, or you make room for someone who will." That line stuck. You could see it on their faces. Not clapping, not performative smiles, just recognition. But even as he walked back to his office, Andre knew this wasn't the resolution. It was the rebuild. And rebuilds only work when the foundation's strong, and the next storm's already forming. By the time Andre sat back at his desk, his real desk, with his initials etched into the glass corner, the fallout had already begun. Emails poured in, from legal, from media, from former board members scrambling to reposition themselves, some trying to soften the blow of their betrayal, others begging for private conversations off the record. He ignored all of them for now. Instead, he opened one from Janelle. It was short. "I'm out. Not because I didn't believe in you, but because I believed they wouldn't stop. But you proved me wrong. Respect." Attached was her resignation letter, already signed. Andre sat back and closed his eyes for a moment. He wasn't angry with Janelle. She had been there from the early days. She didn't push the knife. She just didn't stop the bleeding. And in a room full of silence, that was enough to make her choose the door. On the floor below, Carmen was holding a closed-door session with risk management. Her tone was calm, direct. She was laying out next steps for internal investigation, audits, and board reconstruction. Andre had full confidence in her. She didn't operate in shadows. She never had. But upstairs, alone, he began to think about the deeper cracks, the ones that didn't show in spreadsheets or profit-loss margins. That morning outside the branch, that hadn't just been a boardroom decision. That was humiliation. Calculated. Public. Designed to turn him into a ghost inside his own house. He turned to the monitor and pulled up the camera footage again. Watched the moment play out frame by frame. There he was, standing in the lobby. Water dripping from his coat. The guards explaining, their eyes avoiding his. The receptionist looking down. Lena standing frozen at the hallway's edge. He didn't watch it for pain. He watched it for proof that people will stay quiet in moments that matter most if they think no one is recording. But now, everyone was watching. The press had caught wind of the internal shakeup. Business blogs were speculating. A few headlines had already appeared. CEO ousted, returns with legal strike. Kinsey Trust faces boardroom turmoil. Andre Kinsey fights back and wins. But it wasn't just the press. Clients were calling too. Andre's assistant popped her head into the office. 2 major investors on line 1. They're curious. Let them hold? You sure? Andre nodded. Curiosity can wait. I want clarity before I answer questions. She stepped back out. Then his phone buzzed with a text from a number he hadn't seen in years. They tried it with me at Pivotal Holdings in 2009. I didn't survive it. But watching you turn that building around in hours? That's something. Respect, brother, Harold Dantzler. Andre stared at the message for a few seconds, then smiled faintly. Harold had been the only other black CEO in finance he knew personally back when he started. They'd shared stories about raised eyebrows in boardrooms and coded language in quarterly reviews. Harold didn't get to keep his company. Andre just had. Barely. That was the part people didn't always get. You don't just fight once. You fight every quarter, every year, every phone call, every internal meeting where your name is on the agenda, but your voice is left off the mic. He stood up and looked out the window. The city below was still moving, rain clearing now, sun trying to push through grey. Inside this building, things were still raw. People were still whispering, but now the whispers carried something different. Not fear, accountability. But Andre knew this wasn't the end of anything. It was just the end of pretending, and the ones who were still pretending, they wouldn't last much longer. Andre didn't say much that night. He left the office after 9 p.m., long after most of the staff had cleared out. Carmen was still in the legal suite downstairs, cleaning up documentation. Lena had gone home hours earlier. He told her to, insisted on it. She'd done enough. Outside, the streets were wet but quiet. That strange calm that hits a city after a long storm. The kind you don't trust right away. He didn't head to his car. Not yet. Instead, he walked 4 blocks down to a small coffee spot that stayed open late. Blue Finch Cafe, tucked between a barber shop and a locksmith. He'd been going there since the early Kinsey Trust days. No one ever bothered him there. The barista barely looked up as she handed him his regular, black coffee, splash of cinnamon. He sat by the window. The day replayed in his mind, not in full scenes, just moments. The security guard shifting uncomfortably. Ronald at the desk, smug and stiff. Carmen laying out papers like she'd been waiting for this all year. Lena handing over that clause like it was sacred. And the thing that stuck most, the silence. People had watched him get kicked out of his own company and said nothing. Not because they were cruel, because silence is easier than courage when everything's uncertain. Andre sipped his coffee, watching the reflection of the streetlight ripple across the sidewalk. That morning, they thought they buried him. But all they did was remind him how fragile power is when it's built on fear. He reached for his phone and opened his notes app. Then he began typing. Not a press release, not a board memo. A message for the people who needed to hear it most. If they can take it from you without warning, you never really had it. If you're not in the room when they vote, make sure you wrote the rules. And when they tell you it's just business, check who profits from your silence. Ownership isn't about titles. It's about memory, proof, and the will to show back up. He paused, reread it, then hit save. That's what he'd say in the next team meeting. No slides, no jargon, just truth. Because if this whole thing had taught him anything, it was that vision without structure was just hope. And hope couldn't protect a legacy. Documents could, clauses could, people with backbone could. The truth was, Andre hadn't outsmarted them. He'd simply been ready. He'd built Kinsey Trust not to impress, but to endure. And endurance wasn't loud. It was quiet. boring even. It was filing that clause 10 years ago when nobody was paying attention. It was training Lena to memorize key phrases in the charter. It was bringing Carmen in, not because she was flashy, but because she never blinked under pressure. It was knowing that storms always come, but not every structure survives the wind. Andre stood up, dropped a 5 on the counter for the barista, and walked back toward the parking garage. The rain had stopped for real now. Streetlights reflected off the asphalt like gold on water. When he got home, his suit was still damp at the sleeves. But his name was still on the building. And tomorrow, it would be even louder than before. If you've made it this far, remember something. People will try to rewrite your story, erase you, silence you, box you out of what you built. Let them try. But write your own name in the fine print. Know your documents. Know your people. Know your power. Because storms come. But when you're the foundation, you don't just survive, you stand. If you felt something during this story, share it. And if you believe more people need to hear stories like this, hit subscribe. This isn't the last one.